The snow came without warning. What started as gentle flakes in the early evening soon thickened into heavy sheets of white, driven sideways by the howling wind. Within hours, the streets were buried, cars were skidding helplessly, and the town seemed swallowed by the storm. In a modest wooden house on the edge of town lived Clara, a middle-aged housekeeper known for her hard work and kindness. She had spent her day cleaning homes and was preparing a simple dinner of soup and bread when she heard a strange noise outside, the sound of spinning tires and frantic honking. Pulling her shawl tight around her shoulders, Clara opened the door. The cold air cut like a knife, but what she saw startled her even more. One by one, expensive cars, sleek black sedans, shining SUVs, and even a limousine were pulling up along the road, headlights piercing through the snow. Men and women in designer coats stumbled out, shielding their faces from the wind. At first, Clara thought she must be dreaming. These weren't ordinary travelers. Their clothing, their jewelry, and their accents all spoke of wealth. They were millionaires, business owners, investors, and socialites, all caught in the storm while traveling to a private retreat in the mountains. One of them, a tall man with sharp features, knocked on her door. "Ma'am, please. Our cars can't go any farther. The hotels are closed and the roads are blocked. We're freezing out here. Could we stay inside just until the storm passes?" Clara looked at the group, 15 strangers, shivering in the snow. She had only 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, and barely enough food for herself. But something inside her heart whispered, "Help them." Without hesitation, she smiled. "Come in. My home may be small, but it's warm." The millionaires exchanged surprised glances. They weren't used to people opening doors without suspicion or asking for money. Still, they gratefully accepted and hurried inside. Clara laid extra blankets on the floor, served steaming bowls of soup, and kept the fire going through the night. Her humble house was crowded and noisy, but it glowed with warmth, laughter, and gratitude. Little did she know, this single act of kindness would change her life forever, because the next morning, when the storm cleared, 135 luxury cars would line up outside her home. Inside Clara's modest house, the air was filled with the scent of her simmering soup and the crackling of the fireplace. The millionaires, who only hours ago had been wrapped in luxury and chauffeured cars, now found themselves sitting cross-legged on Clara's carpet, sharing chipped bowls and mismatched spoons. One woman, draped in fur, lifted her spoon slowly. This soup, it's wonderful." Her voice carried genuine surprise. She was used to 5-star cuisine, but somehow the warmth of Clara's simple meal touched her in a way that truffle dishes never had. The tall man who had first spoken at the door, Mr. Donovan, chuckled. "I can't remember the last time I ate something cooked with such care. It feels like home." Clara, moving gently between her guests, smiled. "It's nothing fancy, just potatoes, carrots, and broth. But food tastes better when shared." The millionaires exchanged glances. That single sentence seemed to echo louder than the wind outside. These were people who often ate alone at large tables, guarded by schedules and business deals. Sharing a humble meal in a stranger's home felt almost foreign. As the hours passed, the storm raged, but the atmosphere inside grew warmer. A man known for running one of the largest tech companies in the country laughed openly as he lost a game of cards Clara had suggested. Another, a fashion mogul, sat on the floor teaching Clara's old cat how to chase a string of yarn. For the first time in years, many of them forgot about money, status, and image. They were simply human beings, tired, cold, but grateful. At one point, one of the youngest millionaires, barely in his 30s, asked Clara curiously, "Why did you let us in? You didn't know us. We could have taken advantage of you." Clara looked up from where she was folding extra blankets. Her answer was calm but firm, because kindness is never wasted. In storms, we're all the same, rich or poor. We all need warmth, food, and a place to rest. The room went silent for a moment. Those words struck deeper than she realized. Many of them had lived lives measured by profit margins and numbers, yet this woman, with almost nothing, carried a wealth they had never owned. They stayed up late into the night, listening to stories, sharing bits of their lives, and even helping Clara mend a small draft near her window. The millionaires, usually surrounded by assistants and staff, found themselves sweeping floors, washing dishes, and laughing while doing chores. It was an evening that humbled them. None of them knew that the experience would ripple into something far greater, because when morning came, their gratitude would no longer fit inside Clara's little home. It would spill out into the streets, marked by 135 gleaming cars that would shock the entire neighborhood. When dawn finally broke, the storm had eased. The once raging winds slowed to a whisper, and sunlight reflected off the fresh blanket of snow that coated every rooftop and tree branch. Clara stirred awake first. Her old alarm clock ticked steadily on the nightstand, reminding her that it was another ordinary morning, or so she thought. Quietly, she rose and peeked into the living room. To her amazement, the Millionaires were still there, huddled under blankets on the floor, some snoring, some murmuring in their sleep. For a moment, Clara simply smiled. They looked just like children, she thought. All the titles and wealth didn't matter now. She went to the kitchen and began preparing tea and oatmeal, stretching her supplies as far as they would go. She wasn't worried about running out. Somehow, she trusted that what she gave would always come back to her in another way. As the guests slowly woke up, rubbing their eyes and stretching, they were met with the comforting smell of breakfast. "You're serving us again?" asked Mrs. Fontaine, a jewelry magnate, her voice tinged with disbelief. Clara chuckled softly. "Of course. Everyone needs a warm start to the day. Sit, eat." They did. And once again, silence filled the room as spoons tapped bowls. The simplest of meals somehow carried the greatest flavor. After breakfast, the Millionaires gathered their coats and prepared to leave. But before they stepped out, Mr. Donovan lingered behind. He looked Clara in the eye and said, "You've done more than you realize. You've shown us something we forgot. What it feels like to be cared for without expectation. That kind of wealth doesn't come from money." Clara, a little embarrassed, shook her head. "Nonsense. I just did what anyone should." But as they left her house, she noticed something unusual. Each guest was making a phone call, speaking in hushed tones, their eyes glancing back at her home with expressions she couldn't quite read. Clara shrugged it off and began tidying the blankets and dishes. She thought her life would return to normal now. Yet, less than an hour later, a rumble filled the street. The sound of engines, dozens of them, drawing closer. Curious, Clara stepped outside. Her jaw dropped. One after another, sleek luxury cars began pulling up along her narrow street. Black SUVs, polished sports cars, elegant limousines, each vehicle gleaming in the morning sun. Within minutes, there were not 10, not 20, but over 100 cars, their engines humming, their drivers stepping out with boxes, bags, and packages. Neighbors peeked out of their windows, whispering in astonishment. Some even came outside, phones in hand, recording the unbelievable sight. Clara's tiny home, which had sheltered 15 people the night before, now stood at the center of a scene that looked like something out of a movie. When Clara counted roughly, she realized there were about 135 cars parked along her street. Confused, she turned to Mr. Donovan, who was standing proudly by one of the limousines. What is all this?" she stammered. Mr. Donovan smiled warmly. "This, Clara, is gratitude, and it's only the beginning." The sight outside Clara's home was surreal. Neighbors were gathering in clusters, whispering and pointing as luxury cars kept arriving, each bearing some kind of offering. Delivery vans even began unloading boxes, stacking them neatly by her gate. Clara felt overwhelmed. She had never seen so much wealth concentrated in one place, and now it was surrounding her tiny house. Mr. Donovan stepped forward and raised his voice. "Clara, last night you gave us warmth, food, and a place to belong. You asked for nothing in return. So this morning, we decided to give you what you've given us, but multiplied." The first car door opened. Out stepped a driver holding a set of keys. He placed them gently in Clara's hand. "This is for you," he said. "A brand new sedan." Clara blinked, shaking her head. "No, I can't possibly accept." Before she could finish, another driver approached with keys to an SUV, then another with keys to a compact car. Within minutes, Clara's hands were full, trembling with shock. "This isn't real," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. The Millionaires smiled knowingly. "It is real," Mrs. Fontaine said, stepping closer. "You gave us something money can't buy. Now we want to ensure you never worry about anything again." Another man gestured toward the vans. "These boxes are filled with food, clothes, and supplies for your community. We noticed how much you cared for us. We believe you'll know how to share these with those who need it most." By now, the entire neighborhood was buzzing. Children gasped at the sight of so many cars. Adults whispered among themselves, wondering how an ordinary housekeeper had managed to gather such a crowd of wealthy, influential people. Clara, still stunned, asked, "But why all of this? I only gave you what anyone else would have." Mr. Donovan stepped closer, his voice firm but kind. That's where you're wrong. Not everyone opens their door to strangers, especially not 15 of us, and certainly not without expecting something in return. You gave without hesitation. That's rare in this world. We want the world to see that kindness still exists. Tears streamed down Clara's cheeks as she looked around. It wasn't just about the cars, the food, or the supplies. It was about the respect, the recognition, and the way her small act of compassion had ignited something extraordinary. By the time the sun was fully up, news crews had arrived. Cameras flashed, microphones were thrust toward Clara, and reporters clamored for the story. Housekeeper shelters millionaires. 135 cars arrive in thanks. The headlines would later read. But at that moment, standing on her snowy porch with her hands still full of car keys, Clara only whispered one thing to herself: kindness really does come back. The once quiet street was now alive with voices, camera flashes, and the gleam of luxury cars parked in every available space. Clara stood at the center of it all, her modest home suddenly the focus of national attention. Reporters surrounded her. "Clara, how does it feel to receive such an overwhelming gift?" one asked. Clara, wiping away tears, simply answered, "I didn't expect anything. I only did what was right." But this proves that kindness still matters, even in a world where it sometimes feels forgotten. Her words struck deeply, spreading quickly across news broadcasts and social media. People around the world watched the story of a housekeeper who had sheltered 15 millionaires during a snowstorm, and who woke to find 135 cars and countless blessings waiting at her door. But the millionaires weren't finished. Later that afternoon, Mr. Donovan gathered Clara and her neighbors. He announced, "Clara's kindness has inspired us. Today, we're establishing the Clara Foundation, dedicated to helping working-class families who struggle to make ends meet. We'll fund housing, food, and education programs in her honor." Gasps of amazement rippled through the crowd. Clara clutched her chest, overwhelmed by the scale of it all. She had gone from living in quiet obscurity to becoming the heart of a movement that would change lives far beyond her street. Neighbors who once saw her as just the housekeeper now looked at her with admiration and pride. Children hugged her legs, adults shook her hand, and strangers thanked her for reminding them of the power of simple goodness. In the weeks that followed, Clara's life did change. She received a new home, reliable income, and a place on the board of the foundation bearing her name. But through it all, she remained humble, continuing to cook simple meals, tend her small garden, and greet neighbors with the same warm smile. When asked years later what she remembered most from that unforgettable night, Clara never spoke of the cars, the cameras, or even the foundation. She always said, "I remember 15 tired souls who found comfort in my home." That's all it was, and that's all it needed to be. Moral of the story: true wealth is measured not by what you own, but by what you give. One act of kindness can ripple outward, touching countless lives. In moments of crisis, compassion breaks down the walls of class, status, and pride, reminding us we are all human. And so, the housekeeper who gave with her heart received more than she ever imagined. Not because she asked, but because kindness, once released into the world, always finds its way back.